our parents never really let us off the hook in terms of not saying anything. If when we were at the dinner table, there was going to be conversation, and you're going to add to that conversation. Jules had no issue speaking. Jules had no issues speaking his mind. Jules had no issues standing up for, saying, "Oh, I disagree, pops," or just debating. And that was a gift that he had, and that my parents, I believe, allowed him to flourish in. Not saying, "Just be quiet. This is the way it is." Jules was always allowed to speak his mind. I think that was a great example for me. I can't say that I'm a shy guy because look at the career I'm in, but I certainly didn't necessarily have the speaking skills that Julian has. Probably still don't, but at the same time, I am so blessed that I was the younger brother, 4 years younger, and I got to learn and follow. And my sister, same sort of thing, got to learn and follow, and she followed up with me. And I do give full credit to my parents, both my father and my mother, in terms of making sure that we knew how to express ourselves, figuring out until we knew what the right things were to say, and at the same time always respecting your elders.
Welcome to Growth Untold, the podcast, where we dive into thoughtful conversations and insightful discussions with world-class people, all with the aim of inspiring, educating, and empowering our listeners.
We are thrilled to have you here with us on this exciting journey to explore the diverse stories and the ideas that have the power to shape the world for the better.
Welcome to Growth Untold, the podcast.
Our first guest, we have Julian Franklin, a seasoned and award-winning sports marketing executive. From leading marketing efforts at Kraft Heinz to making a mark at Geometry Global on the agency side, and even venturing into entrepreneurship with his own company, Franklin Management Group, Julian's journey is nothing short of inspiring. Currently serving as the VP of Partnership Development and Strategy at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, also known as MLSE, Julian brings a wealth of marketing experience and strategic vision to the table. Welcome, Julian.
Thanks, Alex. Pleasure to be here.
I got to follow that up. Yeah, thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.
And that's it. Our second guest, we have someone with an expert inside look into the worlds of sports journalism, Jermain Franklin. Jermain is a seasoned anchor for TSN Sports Center, one of Canada's largest sports news and information networks. With over 2 decades of experience under his belt, Jermain has covered some of Canada's most beloved sports teams, including the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Calgary Flames, Toronto Blue Jays, Toronto Raptors, and more. Buckle up for an engaging conversation with true sports media pro, Jermain Franklin. Welcome to the show, man.
Pleasure to be here. Really appreciate you guys having me on, having us both on. It's an honor for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, hey man, no problem at all. Before we dive into some questions we got for you guys, and we like to typically jump off the cuff with some stories of your childhood, I want to share a little story with those listening here. So Mina, we spoke about it in our first episode where I was a runner growing up. I did a lot of track growing up. And Mina always remembers because I used to always complain to him, oh my God, we had to do this yesterday, right? Oh my God, we had to do this with coach yesterday, right? So for everybody's listening, the track that I grew up on was called the Conning Franklin track in Stouffville. That was the track that I ran like 4 days a week on. That track was actually named after Julian Franklin.
That is correct.
What?
Isn't that
correct?
Isn't that crazy? It's such
correct.
a small world, but that's
insane. What? I need to know about this. I need to know about this now. How?
Yeah, so like we can use all the running analogies you want, but it looks like Alex has run full circle into interviewing us right now. So
Yeah,
there you go.
exactly.
Yeah, it's probably one of the coolest, but also most amazing things that I've have in my life so far to date, to actually have a facility named after myself and subsequently named after my family as a legacy in the town of Stouffville. And quite frankly, a legacy that, we're super proud of for my children as well as those that are going to come after me. So you know, there's a lot of stories behind it, but I will say that the town of Stouffville has been a bedrock for myself and my parents as well as my brother and sister for almost 30 years now. Germs, maybe no, actually maybe
Yeah.
even longer.
Yeah, longer. Yeah.
And when I was in high school, Stouffville District Secondary School, shout out the SDSS Spartans.
Yes.
I was the student body president in grade 12, I think. And I'm old enough to say that back in the day, grade 13 was a thing. So you guys could figure out my age. And from there, yeah, we created a campaign to get a track in Stouffville. And if anyone is listening from Stouffville or even from York Region, which is just northeast of Toronto, everyone knew that Stouffville didn't have much of anything for all those years growing up. It was just, once you
Farms.
pass, yeah,
Yeah.
farms, land.
Farmlands.
Yeah, I mean, once you passed McCowan or
Major
16th,
Mac.
yeah,
Major
no one
Mac.
was going anywhere. And yeah, we needed it. We needed facilities, and so I was able to be, kind of a linchpin in rallying the community and our school to get a track. And it happened after I graduated, but I was honored when the town decided to name it after myself and our longstanding high school gym teacher, Dave Connell. So it's an honor, and it's something that we go back to and check out every time we're in town.
Isn't
Wow, that's huge. That's huge. That's amazing. What an interesting story.
Yeah.
right? That's
Alex didn't utilize the track really well. He
Yeah, I
sucked,
want to know what
but
Alex's times were, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's the whole thing. I
so
think he
bad.
brought that up to get me to
Oh,
say it, but we need to know what his times were on that track because
oh, terrible.
it was a
I
it was a
know.
good track, state of the art, Alex. So you can't complain saying the conditions weren't bad. So
No,
Yeah,
it
and
was
they've kept that track up to the town of Stouffville's credit. They've resurfaced it a few times. I've run a few laps in the last few years. Now that I'm back, and yeah, it's definitely a proud moment. I will say as well, guys. Um, I don't think anybody sold more grapefruits, oranges, lemons than our gym class to raise funds for that promise made. And yeah, it's a crown jewel for sure for the town because I know, like you said, Alex, you practiced there. One time I was running, I saw two bus loads of athletes come into that track, and I just asked them where they were coming from, and they were coming from Barrie. They're like, "This is the best track in the York region, and there's no real facility in Barrie." So they literally drive an hour and a half to 2 hours just to train on that track. So it's not just Stouffville's track, but it's at least York region's track and a lot further as well.
And for our listeners who are listening from outside of Toronto, the GTA, outside of Canada, basically, growing up, not a lot of people lived downtown Toronto. So there's this area called the Greater Toronto Area, which is the suburbs that surround Toronto, Toronto,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
which is where we
silent
all
N.
yeah, right. Which is where we all grew up. So Alex and I grew up in Markham, but we also spent a lot of time in Stouffville, which is a neighboring town, and Richmond Hill, which is another neighboring town. And what I'm getting from the Franklins here, which I want to get into, is that you guys grew up in Stouffville. So were you born there? Talk us through a little bit about your childhood and where you grew up, and then we'll get into the professional life in a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in first, bro, and you can tag team here as well. But what I would say is, we grew up everywhere. Actually, Stouffville was our final, shall we say, settling place.
Destination.
Yeah, because when we were young, actually, we lived in Markham. I was born at Mount Sinai Hospital, lived in Markham on Raymerville Road. So another shout out for anybody who's listening. There's a deep cut for GTA and Markhamites. And our dad still is. He's an engineer by trade. And so from the time I was 7 years of age, to the time I was 16, we lived in a bunch of different places across the U.S. and Canada. So Markham is where we started, but then St. John, New Brunswick, Houston, Texas, Edmonton, Alberta, uh, and Philadelphia,
Philadelphia.
Pennsylvania, right? And then essentially resettled back close to Markham in the town of Stouffville when I was 16. So, our
And how
childhood.
old were you, Jermaine, when
Uh,
Julian was?
yeah, so I'm 4 years younger than Jules. So I would say my my oldest memories are probably from St. John, New Brunswick. Not many because the memory I have is falling off my bike, cracking my skull open. Perfect. But as soon as we got to Edmonton from kindergarten on, yeah, that's when I really have good memories.
So
Or
you settled back
terrible
when you were
memories.
12. Julian was about 16.
Yeah.
What did your
Exactly.
parents do that you traveled this much?
So,
So like,
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead, Germs.
yeah. So like Jules said, our dad was or is still is an engineer, and they had my parents. They had an attitude of, hey, I won't say let's see the world, but let's see North America. And if we have the opportunity, um, we're gonna take it. And that was mainly my dad. My dad's like, I have a few opportunities, let's take it. And my mom was fully supportive. She's a social worker. Both of them are educated, university educated. They immigrated to from Jamaica to Canada, not together. They actually met in Montreal. Two Jamaicans met in Montreal as students, and the rest is history.
Yep.
But like you said, Mina, my dad, or like you asked, my dad, he's an engineer. He had a lot of opportunities, and they jumped on it. So that allowed us to see a lot of North America. Like Jules said, St. John's, New Brunswick, he would have better memories of that. Edmonton, Alberta. I remember that digging out of our house, building forts in the snow, walking to school, Brookwood Elementary, if I'm right, bro.
Yep, you
And
got it.
then of course Philadelphia. We were there for 3.5 to 4 years, in a small town called Royersford, and it was a twin town, Royersford and Spring City. And I would say that's where Jules really found his leadership skills because you were class president there as well, weren't you?
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
And Julian, I'm assuming traveling around this much in a relatively short amount of time, I guess this really helps you build your bond as brothers and as a family because maybe you don't have as much time to make friends, but you're always moving, but really you have each other. Would you say that really helped form the family bond?
Yeah. I mean, you've nailed it. I mean, our family is, and forever will be incredibly tight. We mentioned my parents. Germs and I have a younger sister named Jessica, so she was a part of this too. So, the five of us, are quite a tight unit. I would say this: the ability to kind of move around, and quite frankly, there's a glass half full and glass half empty when you do that, because settling down and roots are something that you don't have the luxury of, like a lot of other folks and friends that you grew up with have, and being in one place and forming bonds, and understanding your community and your school, and creating those relationships. But on the flip side, there's very few people that I engage with who have had the varied background experience I have had when it comes to moving and meeting new people, taking risks, and understanding the experience of being able to lean into that part of your personality and kind of diving into it. And I think my mom and dad really gave us that as a gift, by moving around. And to this day, to answer your question, we're an incredibly tight family.
So
And
just
I'll just add real quick that Jessica, our sister, is probably the smartest out of the three of us.
Yeah, she definitely is.
Yeah,
She's the most educated.
yeah.
She's got her PhD, so she got to refer to her as
wow.
doctor around the dinner table. So, she's more accomplished than the two of us put together.
Oh man. Which is I think that's a nice segue into just your family, what you learned, and some key lessons, because it just looks like you had such an enriching childhood, to Mina's point of building the bond of the family, moving around a lot, learning that of their approach of living life and experiences of moving together. Were there any other key lessons that were instilled in you? Like um it's no secret that you both are obviously in key positions in big sports and entertainment companies. So was sports a big part of your childhood growing up? We spoke about the track right off the cuff. I would love to learn more about just some of the lessons, some of the things that they expose you to as children growing up.
Well, Alex, you're talking to Jermaine, who's like a world-class hockey player here. I mean, he's got a pedigree of hockey behind him, and I think I'll let him chat about it. But we kind of grew up, playing all the sports that were required to, to kind of either fit in or just get into, the ability to be a part of a community quicker. And I think, our parents did a great job of that. Hockey was a big part of that everywhere we went. Soccer and track as well were big parts of it. So I would say like sport for me was crucial, and it's something that I wasn't as good as Germs, but Germs definitely was able to take it to a certain level, and I think that we would say it's even to this day still a part of kind of what we do.
Yeah, I wouldn't say world class, fellas, but hockey was definitely my favorite sport. I took it as far as I could. Went to played a little bit of Junior A in Aurora, so I played for the Aurora Eagles at the time. They're now the Aurora Tigers. So I played there for a little while, and then unfortunately, when I realized that I'm not a good multitasker. Let's just say that. So when it came to high school and going to and committing 5 days a week to hockey, my grades definitely suffered, and I was not getting as much playing time as anybody who dreams of making the NHL should or would. So by about grade 11, had to make a decision to try and up these grades. Realized that if I wanted to stay in sports, it's probably going to be on the speaking side, and yeah, so I eventually started playing junior C, so just three or 4 days a week instead of 5 or 6, and that helped me raise my grades. And then I ended up going to the University of Windsor for communications, and worked my way through to finally get through to TSN.
Wow.
Well, Jermaine, I mean, you obviously made that decision pretty early. I mean, you're saying about grade 11, you kind of knew, all
Yeah.
right, I want to be a sports anchor. I want to do sports journalism. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, fair to say. And let me just say that I did listen to a couple of your podcast, boys, and you're doing a phenomenal job. I think you have a fan in me, and I definitely am a follower already. And the reason why I say that, Mina, is because I know from your guys' first episode, you are a very brilliant young man. So I
Thank you. That's so
so I
sweet.
would be a little jealous, because I'm like, man, how are these guys getting these amazing grades when I'm like not getting there? So yeah, that's why I had to make that decision, knowing that I had to put a lot more time to get my grades up for university level. And I'm not talking U of T. I'm talking like, Windsor and Ottawa U and Carleton and those schools. Which I was accepted to, but chose Windsor, and that's why I had to make the decision, because I knew I wasn't going to the NHL, so I had to make sure I found another avenue while still enjoying sports.
Well, decision well made. I think a lot of people dream of doing what you do, which is, being a sports anchor, being on TSN. And for listeners outside of Canada, I always view TSN as essentially the ESPN of Canada. Is that fair to say? Is that a fair comparison?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know exactly the year that TSN made the decision to go from the sports desk to Sports Center, just like ESPN, but ESPN does own a portion of TSN. Not a large portion, I believe. The last I checked, I thought it was 20%. A couple of articles that I've read is they say that may own as much as 30%. Bell Media owns 70%, but that percentage allowed TSN to use the Sports Center, I guess, logo, the graphics, you name it, the blueprint basically. So TSN is very much like ESPN Canada. But trust me, if you talk to, and I'm sure both you and Alex know that if an American comes up to Canada, Ontario, whatever province it is, and they start watching TSN, the first thing they'll say is, "This is nothing like ESPN. Why is there so much hockey? You know,
Yeah.
why are you focusing on Aliassime and Shapovalov when so it's definitely different. It's definitely Canadian, but yes, it is the ESPN of Canada.
But I do consider it, at the very top of sports broadcasters. So, to have made your way there, that's not an easy feat. And like I said, I think that's a lot of things that, young people do dream of. I have a funny little story. When I grew up in the church, and when I told my, parents and my community I was going to go into acting, they were all outraged, and very disappointed. And my parents wanted me to go to talk to our priest. And so I went to talk to our priest, and he was trying to convince me not to go into acting, essentially. And so he kept getting more and more desperate as the conversation went on, and kept coming to my side a little bit more. So first he was like, "Okay, you don't want to be a doctor. Well, what about a therapist? Okay, you don't want to be a therapist. Well, what about a journalist? What about an academic journalist? Okay, you don't want to be a journalist. What about a sports anchor? You love basketball. Why don't you go into be a sports anchor?" So if it makes you feel any better, my priest felt like being a sports anchor was more respectable than being an actor. So there you go.
Yeah, you better stick to theology on that premise. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think you made
And
the right decision, Mina.
hey, thank you, thank you. And Julian, you too have found your way into sports now. Like Alex mentioned, it wasn't always sports. You did marketing for other companies, certainly, but you
Definitely.
found your way to MLSE. Can you please explain to again our audience, whether in Canada or outside of Canada, what is the MLSE? Because here, I mean, I'll let you take it, but the MLSE is the king of sports organizations. Can you tell us what the MLSE is and what you do there, and how you came to that?
Yeah, and happy to. And MLSE stands for Maple Leaf Sport and Entertainment, and essentially, it is the holding company of the premier teams in hockey, basketball, football, Canadian football, and then global football, or as some of us say, soccer here, in teams known as the Toronto Raptors, Toronto Argos, TFC, as well as last but not least the Toronto Maple Leafs. Besides the teams, MLSE also owns buildings such as Scotiabank Arena, as also BMO Field. We also have a number of cultural spaces within the city of Toronto, most specifically MLSE Launchpad, which is a fantastic edifice downtown, which really focuses on youth, at-risk youth who are in the city of Toronto, providing sports programming for them, 5 days a week, which is fantastic. And then we also own culinary restaurants. So it truly is a global sports conglomerate. I would say, on par with pretty much any other sports conglomerate across the world. Within North America, pleased to say there really is, maybe one that's in parallel. But when you think about our business, when you think about our arena, over 280 dates a year, which are filled with not only sports but also live music. MLSE also is connected with Live Nation. So when you think of, just recently, the Toronto Maple Leafs were playing the other night, then Madonna was there the night before, and really, with the exception of Madison Square Garden, and I think the Staples Center in LA, we're the third busiest venue in North America. And quite frankly, it's something that probably will continue, as I know Staples will change when the Clippers leave. So that's the company I work for. Pleased to be an executive there. It's an honor. My kind of path into sport, actually, ironically, it started in sports. My first job out of university was with the Toronto Blue Jays, and actually was with them for the first 7 years of my career. And then I moved into packaged goods marketing from there, and really cut my teeth in understanding the power of brand and what that meant. And it was a really amazing time in my career. And now there's some opportunities that have presented myself along the way that I know we'll get into, but it's almost been like a full circle moment. I've started in sport with the Blue Jays, and now I've returned in sport with MLSE.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah, just to understand it was like, yeah, again, a full circle moment. Can you walk us through, like, because I actually, when I went to LA with Mina to actually do some of these episodes for Growth Untold, I actually was lucky enough to go to crypto.com arena and check out a Lakers game. And I thought it was amazing just to witness that. But it's also incredible that whenever I speak to people in the US and other parts of the world, MLSE is a global property. Curious, like, how have you, because the product that you put out, going to a Leafs game, going to a Raptors game, it's honestly, it's hard to compare and compete with what you do. And it's outside of the product of what happens on the court, on the ice, on the field, on the pitch. It's like what you do outside of that with like fan experiences, like Canon shooting out t-shirts, dancers,
Yeah.
right? Like the celebrity cam, like
Yep.
you always pushing the envelope. Where does that come from? Is there a certain task force you have there at MLSC that ensures that you guys are always bringing the game? Julian, it's you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I would love to say it is, but it's a team, right? And I get the energy from the team, to kind of just add to it as much as I can. It is something where we've had, the pleasure of having, so many great employees who basically, just embody what it means to be, an MLSE employee, and have all four of those teams and everything that I had mentioned earlier, just kind of coursing through our veins. Like our mission statement is bringing the world to its feet, right? And when you think about what that means, and also how that ties into the city of Toronto, and what it means to be kind of at the forefront of sport and culture, and when you step into our buildings and you're getting the vibe of what a Raptors vibe is, and then the next day you turn that around and you get a vibe of what a Maple Leafs vibe is, two different vibes, but equally as powerful, right? And then, then you want to go and catch, TFC play a footy match, or the Argos play their games. Like, all of these things, are kind of in our lab here, just trying to figure out what is going to keep fans excited, keeping them coming through the gates. And then, oh, by the way, if they can't get to us, how are they following us on our socials? How are we making sure that, what our players are doing, whether it's in fashion or what they're doing in the community, is resonating. And so we're always kind of, bringing that energy. And I think we pushed ourselves to kind of deliver that, not only on just the sales side, but the marketing side, also the community side, from the top down. So it's been a great experience for me, because I love bringing energy to anything I do. I love bringing energy to people, I love bringing energy to spaces. And this place has given me a ton of energy just to continue to kind of push that out. So, when MLSE, steps on the scene, whether we're in Toronto or in LA, or Dubai, like, people know who we are, because we're delivering that. And, we're on and off the court, or on and off the pitch. So I'm really thrilled to be a part of the organization.
100%. Always a world-class experience going to sports events in Toronto. I want to ask you something that I've wondered for a long time. I've heard about, I've never gone online and tried to verify. I've heard like MLSE is owned by the teachers union, like different kinds of unions. Can you speak to that? Are the teachers unions involved with MLSE or the Raptors or something like that?
So our ownership structure, and it's a great question. Our ownership structure, we've had owners throughout kind of MLSE's, entity and evolution over the last, 2.5 decades. Currently, the organization's owned by our two leading telecommunications companies here in Canada, Bell and Rogers. They, between the two of them, they own roughly, I think, 70%, 75% of the organization. And the benefit of that is, the connectivity to our fans and the viewership and the broadcast of our teams is really through those two channels, which is fantastic for us. And then we have the last quarters owned by Larry Tannenbaum, who is been a part of the organization for a number of years, originally with the Toronto Raptors, and then was able to kind of bring a lot of that together in some of the mergers with the various entities across the business landscape in Toronto. And he's continued on as an owner of a 25% stake. So, we have the best of both worlds in having corporate as well as, individual ownership who are all passionate about us winning championships.
Yeah, because I'm wondering when Drake wants to be involved with the
Yeah.
Raptors, and he certainly has enough money to do it. So I was always wondering, like, when's Drake gonna own a piece of the Raptors? But this really helps. And
Yeah.
I have a show with Bell called Evolving Vegan, so I got to tell him to hook me up with tickets. What's going
There you
on
go.
here? I
There
need
you go.
tickets.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you got to come find us. We'll
Yeah,
be there. Look for Germs and I courtside. We'll have to sit with you too.
Yeah, I
yeah.
was gonna say I need tickets too. Jules is my in. Like,
What's going on?
so
All right,
we
we're
got to
all getting
work
outed
on
here. It's going to
Bell.
happen, gentlemen. Don't worry. Alex, you too, you're in.
There you go. One thing I want to talk about, and sorry, I mean, I look like you're about to ask a question, but in terms of your experience, Julian, of working at MLSE, but it's crazy just that, and it's interesting also to see the experience that you have. And we call it kind of, or I call it, I can't speak for other people, but in the sports entertainment industry, you kind of call it, especially in sponsorship, the holy trinity. Meaning you have worked on the agency side, you've worked on the brand side, and now you're on the property side.
Yeah,
Agency being like Geometry Global, Franklin Management Group,
yeah.
property being like MLSE, the Toronto Blue Jays, and then the brand side, right? And Kraft Heinz Group. Can you walk us through just some of like the nuances of working with that, like the changing dynamic? It must be super interesting to have that prism or that lens of all three of those sectors.
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky and blessed to be in some great situations throughout my career. And it's one of these things where, I look back and say, there's been a lot of cool things that I've been a part of, and a lot of amazing people that I've met and still, hold some really strong relationships with. And I think that's one of the things that I would say that I continue to strive to do is, building authentic relationships with people, especially in the business world is key and crucial. And it's helped me, being on the brand side, I would say, you know, that was where I really learned, kind of, the influence and power of, being able to, you know, influence people, articulate what a vision is, be really strategic and go deep into kind of the reasons as to why, we'd want to be engaged in a certain initiative, or what consumer behavior is going to really drive kind of the ability for someone to purchase or to think of our brand and business first. Really, enjoyed, a decade at Kraft Heinz, both in the US and Canada. I was lucky enough to work out of our Chicago office for 4 years, as well as, 6 years here in Toronto, and kind of was able to kind of really, cut my teeth in understanding, packaged goods marketing. I'd be remiss too. I spent some time with Weston Foods, which is another great Canadian packaged goods company, for a number of years, and kind of, really was able to kind of learn and understand the power of brand that way, and also the ability to kind of influence and articulate and work cross-functionally, and how to get people on your side when you're trying to build something internally. I took that and really was able to go agency side. Was lucky enough to run Geometry, the Canadian offices, for a couple of years here. And also, learn the ability of handling rejection. And it's something that, you through your career, especially when you've been on the brand side for a number of years, you're the one that's making the decision. You're the one that has the funds and is able to kind of engage with different parties to say, we're going to go this way. And, the wherewithal and the funding and the financing to do that is in my hands, and that power. You flip over to an agency side, and you're really learning, about things that are key. How are you able to handle rejection? How are you able to, build relationships and bond to convince somebody to do something? How are you pitching ideas? Even if it's a great idea, if it's not the right time for that idea, how do you motivate people, when, constantly, you're being asked to show your worth and represent yourself to get, quite frankly, what may be a small dollar, but you need that dollar to keep things moving, for the organization. So, I would say that, that kind of, ability to kind of learn that, was, a good humbling experience, because you understand kind of what's on the other side of the table. And then, taking that and going to my own entrepreneurial experience and launching Franklin Management Group, really kind of lead into the importance of customer service and being able to over deliver. It was something key. And then last but not least, being on the property side, working in sport, it really is really helping people on the other side of the table understand what the power of sport is, right? I think a lot of us know the power of something that gets you so emotionally, involved that you just, lose yourself in, the experience. And there's very few things, like sports that can do that. I know I may be a bit biased, but, Leafs making a run in the playoffs, this town and this province is going off, right? Raptors winning a chip in 2019. You just don't get 3 million people going to downtown Toronto just because of, a play or a movie or, something different, right? It's just not there. And sports kind of does that for us. And so, being able to deliver that for people, when they're making decisions and kind of having them see that vision, is the key part of what I'm doing now. And then, great segue. Germs gets the ability to talk about it every day because he knows what that the power sport's all about.
Yeah, so Jermaine, I wanted to ask you because, I grew up in Toronto. We all, of course, grew up loving sports. I grew up playing a little bit. I played for the OBA for a year, the Ontario Basketball Association, and like you, I realized I wasn't going to grow anymore in height, so I had to pivot. I wasn't going to become a professional basketball player, but I grew up watching TSN, grew up in the sports world of Canada. I think Canada has one of the best underrated sports atmospheres in the world. And like Julian said, we won a chip back in 2019, the Raptors, the Leafs, they have their moments, but for the most part, they're a dynasty. They're a hockey dynasty. Why do you think, Jermaine, that Canada doesn't get its flowers when it comes to sports? Like living now in the US, they never talk about the Raptors and it
Yeah.
pisses me off. I'm like, yo, we won a championship. Like we're good. We were good for a lot of years. They never talk about us. Why do you think Canada doesn't like get its moment in the eyes of the rest of the world?
That's a great question. I personally think it's just out of sight, out of mind. I mean, if you look at sport, and what Jules said is 100% correct. A team can bring a province, a nation together, especially when you're talking about the Raptors or the Blue Jays, and well, original six, the Maple Leafs and the Canadians. But at the same time, sport is regional. Sport is regional. So if you're an American fan, and we'll just use basketball as a example. If you're an American fan, say you're a Golden State fan, you're in San Francisco. Golden State plays the Raptors twice. That's two times they even have to worry about who Jakob Poeltl is, right? If he's playing. And then Golden State travels to Toronto once. So they only see, and if my theory is right, it being regional, Americans, they forget about the Raptors as soon as their team's out of there, and they don't see him again for another year unless they meet in the playoffs. That's not the same as in the East Coast. Brooklyn is very aware of the Raptors after what Masai Ujiri said when they first
Mm-hmm.
met.
Mm-hmm.
And that is special too. So rivalries, that creates more knowledge about who you're rivaling with. But that's I think that's what it is in a nutshell. And one of the very first experiences for me, when I got the job at TSN, I was hired at TSN in September of '03. The Flames hadn't made, and this is to be a reporter in Calgary, the Flames hadn't made the playoffs in 7 years. They called the Saddle Dome the Silent Dome. They called it a library, and it was. But Daryl Sutter had taken over that team at the middle of the previous year. They just missed the playoffs. Everybody thought they were going to miss the playoffs again. They didn't. Mika Kiprasov came in. All of a sudden, Calgary is alive. Like the city is electric. The province is like, what is going on here? The Red Mile was created, and you can't tell me, like we talk about Jurassic Park. You can't tell me that wasn't created after what happened in '04 with the Calgary Flames. After they won the first playoff series, it was on. People were were watching, where they were crowding around the Saddle Dome, watching the game outside. The spring, it was warmer than usual for some reason, and the city came together, the area came together, and that's what sports does. And that was just a special time. It was a baptism by fire for me in my first year, going all the way to the Stanley Cup final. My daughter was born in the second round or the third round of the playoffs when they were playing Detroit. And I remember talking to my one of my producers and assignment editors. His name was Steve Argentero, and he's like, you know what, Jermaine, Flames aren't going to make it out of the first round. You'll be able to spend time with your wife. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, you're right. And the Flames won. We're like, there's no chance they're beating San Jose. Absolutely no chance. So you'll be good. When's the due date? It's sometime in May. Okay, yeah, you're fine. They beat San Jose in 5, and then it's getting close. And he's like, "Well, it's up to you. You gonna continue covering, or are you gonna?" I'm like, "I gotta like this is once in a lifetime. I'm going." so
Yeah.
so they go to Detroit, and then it totally worked out for me. I did miss Game 5 in Detroit because Micah, my daughter, was about to be born, and she was born. They come back to Calgary for Game 6. I'm back to work. Like I'm like not missing this opportunity. And um, this day and age, like it's only 20 years ago, but 20 years ago, that was like it. This day and age, players are missing time for their kids to be born, which is great. But that just didn't happen because you knew you had more time. But that's sports. That is sports. And that's why I'm so glad to be a part of it. That's why I love telling the stories of sports and sports teams. And being on the desk is really cool. But the one thing that I do miss about reporting is telling the stories behind the scenes sometimes, which is also cool. Definitely
That's
got
why
a
we're
couple
here.
LeBron stories for you too, Mina, if you want one.
Yeah, please. That's why we're here. We want the behind the scenes stories. And I've never heard it explained like that, but you're right. It made while you were talking, it made me think like, you know what? Why should we care what the States thinks of our teams? Why should we care, whether they're giving us attention? Because you're right. I've never heard it explained like that. But sports is about bringing people together, no matter what religion you are, what color of skin you have. It brings people together, and I think as long as it's doing that for your regional local community, then that's really the most pivotal thing about it. You're right. That was amazing. I've never thought about it like that before, but you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you see it in the States too. Sorry, I'll just say it one time. You see it so much in college sports in the States. That's something that is missing here in Canada. But in college sports, if that's not regional, I don't know what is. I mean,
Yeah,
you look at Bama, I mean, you look at
Sure.
even the Florida State Seminoles, you look at these smaller, I guess, states and Auburn, like that's regional, but it's huge. It's life. And it's special.
Yeah, I was going to say like we are 100% missing it. That's on my bucket list. I want to go to a March Madness game. Mina, you can come with if you want. But I
Yeah, please.
yeah,
but
good.
but again, just the visceral emotion you can get from sport and the never gonna happen again moment. There's so many pinch points that like to your point, Jermaine, you had to be there. You're never gonna get that again. right? And there's so many reasons why we love it so much. I think we're actually, I think we should throw it up on the screen of us in Game 6 when Raptors beat the Milwaukee Bucks to make it to the NBA Finals. Mina started live streaming on his Instagram,
There
and
you
there was
go.
like tens of thousands of people watching just me cry. And Mina's just smiling. I'm crying of happiness, and Mina's just like, yeah. And
It
then
was it was amazing. I mean, the amount of people on the streets after that game, and we hadn't even won the championship. We were just going to the finals. And the amount of people on the streets, the roads were closed off. And I mean, big ups to the OPP. I don't know if they had it planned. I don't know if they just moved with the flow, but streets started getting closed off and it was seamless. But there were tons of people, on the streets.
Sports will
Yeah,
do
I mean,
that. I mean,
just
it's crazy that way that you're just you know, carrying kind of the flag of your team, at a particular time. And I mean, we all know like springtime here in the city, if the Raptors are hot, the Leafs are hot, it's a wrap, right? It's like
Yeah.
people are just, ready to go. And I think that's the same obviously in a lot of cities across North America when their teams are making that push, but um there's not very many other things that will get, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people together like sports does. So,
Yeah, and
love it.
Toronto's one of the most beautiful cities in the world when the weather is nice. When the weather is beautiful outside, Toronto is my favorite city. Alex loves to have siblings on. We've had a few siblings now calling the show.
Check.
And so I've got to ask, like, your parents must be really proud of you guys. You both made it to where you wanted to be, and you both have made it so far in life, two successful men in Canada. Can you talk a little bit about, some of that, if not a lot of it, has to have come from your upbringing, has to have come from your parents, the way your parents raised you, your household, your family. You're talking about your sister too. She's got a PhD, right? There's a secret there. There's a recipe for success there that happened when you guys were growing up. Can you each maybe talk about one of those things that you've taken with you in your life and has helped you get to where you are?
Mina, they're Franklins. They have titanium ankles. Nothing can break them down.
Listen, yeah, I mean, we can go long or short or deep on this too. I mean, it's a great question, and in all seriousness, Germs and I and our sister Jessica, we're blessed. We have like quite frankly, the two best parents anybody could ask for. Um, you know, we're blessed that they've been with us, and their health has been something that has been great. So we know that nothing's taken for granted, and close friends who unfortunately do not have parents, because of illness and growing up through life. We are well into our adulthood, and we've had two parents who have just been just fantastic. I think one of the things too is we do have our faith. There's a key component of that our parents have instilled in us, and it's just been something that has been a part of the family unit that we grew up in, and we've kind of carried that on to our kids, as well as to within our own broader family as well. And I think that's really helped us through good times
Can you
and bad.
talk a little bit about how? Because I feel like faith and religion is kind of losing it's losing a little bit of its popularity now, in an ever-changing,
oh, big time.
fast-paced world. We're losing a little bit of focus on faith and religion. Can you talk a little bit about how you think faith has helped you stay grounded and taking you to where you are?
Yeah, and I definitely can, and and I will leave the floor for Germs too, because
Yeah.
one of the things for me is my faith has sustained me through the years that I've been on this earth. Sure, there's been opportunities for me to continue to kind of get deeper in my faith, and I think that's a journey that I'm personally continuing to kind of go through. But I would say that the foundations instilled when we were kids, the ability to just understand the importance of going to church, spending time together, on a Sunday where it's just the five of us, committing to doing things together, in that environment. Also, being leaders within the church community, where, people understood that, the Franklins are involved in doing things that are going to help not only the church, but also the community at hand. It's something that kind of has been a part of kind of my own, faith journey with my family and my wife, and we continue to do that. And yeah, I would say that people, as things have progressed throughout the years, may have moved away from religion, or just moved away from the ability to, be still with oneself and understand, that, there is the ability to kind of put your faith, in, a belief that, that it's going to be, okay. It's going to be an ability to kind of just be still and understand that, God is with you in good times and bad. Your family is with you in good times and bad. And I think that those are things that, we've been blessed with. And we've been insulated quite well because of that, as we've grown up. We know that, quite honestly, as a Black family who's gone into spaces and places, where whether we were welcome or not was not the issue. Is whether we were going to, put our flag in the ground and say, we're here, and this is the space that we're going to own and take up, in the right way, but also, be an example for, whether you're Black, white, or any other race or creed, that the Franklins and are backed by parents have really kind of established that in us. So we walk quite comfortably and our heads held high in any space. So, and that's something that I think that has been a key component of that, and faith has been a part of it. And so
Yeah.
I'll hand it over to Germs.
Yeah, thanks, Jules. Yeah, I just want to say, guys, that faith has always been a part of our family from before we were born. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
One of the things that we told you how much that we moved around. And one of the things I remember asking my parents about it, my dad about it, sometime in the past. And the very first thing, my dad would always go check out where he was going to work ahead of time. But the very first thing that he did was to find a church. So he always and we are it doesn't matter what we are, but we do worship in the Anglican Church, right? We serve in the Anglican Church. But he always found a church, and there was no place that we lived where we did not have um, uh, a home to go to in terms of the house of the Lord. When you talk about how we showed our faith as a family within, I think my parents, my dad, he might be the best at prayer that I've known. Um, we always say prayer. We always said prayer before dinner. We still always say prayer before dinner. We always said prayer before any sort of long trip. We always involved the Lord in anything that we considered to be significant, and we always involved the Lord in anything that we saw as a blessing. That doesn't mean that we took other things for granted, but that just to use this visual, it just washed over us because our parents always involved um, praying to the Lord and figuring that out. And I think um, I don't know how or why it's worked out so well, but because when you think about going to school and so forth, you know, Christ isn't there. And a lot of my friends probably didn't know that I was faith-based until they knew I was faith-based. So I would never say that I was different, but all of a sudden people would see the difference, if that makes any
Yeah, that's
sense to you
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
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 And that's how I would say that faith sustained us through all the different places we've gone through, and all the different places we've been. Um, and the sports we play. It's sports. Like those hockey dressing rooms aren't the best places sometimes. And I could hang. I mean, I'm human. I could hang. But when it came right down to it, you know, I have a different standard in many cases. Not that I didn't be bad. I was bad plenty of time. Maybe that's why I knew I could be bad, because I knew I could be forgiven, or I would be forgiven. But yeah, yeah, that's how I'd say faith played in our lives.
Thanks for sharing that. That was very illuminating to just your childhood, and it contributed to your growth and to how successful you gentlemen are. Um, One thing that I want to just circle back on and get both of your takes on is what Julian said earlier about being in a in a black raised family, holding your head high. I've had the pleasure of just meeting you, Jermaine, briefly, and Julian. Obviously, we've met many times before, and every room that these gentlemen are in, they're very confident. Other than holding their head high, it's easy when you both are 6'5", but
No.
um, but
Jules
there's just
isn't. Jules
Yeah,
isn't.
yeah, no.
sorry, 6'4.5".
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? You both carry yourself with so much confidence, and it doesn't seem like it's a bravado or an act or a bit. It's authentic and real. So that's where I want to focus on a little bit. It's no secret that there probably have been many challenges as a black man in a black family growing up in Canada. So I'm curious in what have you done to build up that confidence with those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's one of these things where you probably aren't aware of it or conscious of it, but subconsciously, you've kind of been given kind of the ability to kind of carry yourself. And I think that, back to our childhood, back to our parents, back to our family unit, and then the ability to kind of step out of kind of, that family unit and into the world. And we all know the world can be rough, it could be cruel. And then just kind of keeping yourself, centered, has been something that, I didn't really consciously think about really until I moved kind of deeper in my career. And then you kind of said, oh, aha, like, I'm this way because of the kind of the breadcrumbs that have built up kind of this amazing foundation. I look at it this way. There's, for a lot of us, as racialized individuals, visible minorities, whatever the mix is you want to call it, we usually are going into spaces where we're one of one of two, boardrooms where, it's strength in numbers, usually of non-BIPOC or white faces that you're engaging with. And subconsciously or consciously on that side, they have a certain element of confidence because of its strength in numbers, right? And so I think, you have to understand, as a BIPOC male or female, that, when you step into those spaces, you have to have that confidence internally. You have to have that foundation, that compass that kind of keeps you grounded. And it's something that I'm thankful that it was given to me without me really even knowing it until I knew it. It's just like it's one of these things where when you look at accomplishments and achievements, it's like, yeah, I'm proud of what I've done, but it's like, wow, how did that happen? It's like it just did. And maybe it goes back to what we talked about our faith earlier. Maybe it goes back to kind of our personalities, how we're, always glass half full, optimistic, look for the best in people. And, sometimes you get burned, but for the most part, it's worked out. So that's kind of, my perspective on it.
Yeah, and I'll just add as well that going back to our childhood and our parents, the one thing that and I don't know if this is the answer, but our parents never really let us off the hook in terms of not saying anything. If when we were at the dinner table, there was going to be conversation, and you're going to add to that conversation. Jules had no issue speaking. Jules had no issues speaking his mind. Jules had no issues standing up for, saying, "Oh, I disagree, pops," or just debating. And that was a gift that he had, and that my parents, I believe, allowed him to flourish in. Not saying, "Just be quiet. This is the way it is." Jules was always allowed to speak his mind. I think that was a great example for me. I can't say that I'm a shy guy because look at the career I'm in, but I certainly didn't necessarily have the speaking skills that Julian has. Probably still don't, but at the same time, I am so blessed that I was the younger brother, 4 years younger, and I got to learn and follow. And my sister, same sort of thing, got to learn and follow, and she followed up with me. And I do give full credit to my parents, both my father and my mother, in terms of making sure that we knew how to express ourselves, figuring out until we knew what the right things were to say, and at the same time always respecting your elders. And I just want to put in one more thing because I know I gave my pops props, which he fully deserves. But I wanted to give my mom real quick props as well because she was a career social worker. She dealt with families, broken homes. She dealt with abused children. She saw all those things. She had to research those things. And I know that she brought the lessons that she learned, and she made sure that we were not falling through the cracks. She just made sure. Like I
Yeah.
said, I wasn't a big school guy, but those parent teacher interviews, I had to get back on track. And they never missed them. They always listened and respected the teacher. If I wasn't doing something, they weren't defending me. They were like, sorry for the inconvenience. Jermaine's going to pick it up. And that's the sort of thing that our parents did. They really gave us a lot of responsibility, but they guided us along the way. And I just had to say that for both mom and pops for sure.
So it sounds like, faith, respect, leadership, tight-knit family, optimism. These are just some of the values that you grew up with that I'm sure contributed to where you are now. As all of us here around this virtual table are, I hate using the word minorities, but we're ethnic, right? And if
And
there
proudly
was
so.
one,
Proudly so,
and
right?
of course, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
And as ethnic people, if there was one piece of advice you can give to people listening who are ethnic, who are looking to do something outside of the big five careers that I would say, being a doctor, law school, that have clear paths, right? Not that those people don't need advice, they do, but there's clear paths with those jobs, right? Like, my sisters are pharmacists, my parents wanted me to be a doctor. Those paths are pretty clear. You go, you do your undergrad, you get good grades, you do this, you do that, you do that. But for our careers, being an actor, being a sports anchor, journalist, being an executive, those paths aren't always clear. You have to think outside of the box. You have to take big risks.
Yep.
And so, if there was some piece of advice that you wanted to give to ethnic people that were going to go down these unclear paths for their careers, what's one piece of advice that you can give? And I know there's many, but if we wanted to kind of keep it short and sweet, what's one piece of advice you could tell those people?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this, lean into being resilient and lean into being optimistic, right? And if you can do that as an individual, there's going to be a lot of good things that are going to follow. Because if you're resilient, then you're going to be open to, you know, good things and bad, and you'll survive. If you're optimistic, you're going to open yourself up to people who want to help you, right? Because we didn't get here alone. We got here through friends and family, and our own kind of personal fortitude to do it. But I would say, my advice to those who are trying to go into unconventional career paths, there are people out there like you. You're not alone. Even though it feels like you may be one of one in a boardroom or an interview setting, you're not alone. There's communities like this that are out here for us in sports entertainment. Like, we're a community, the four of us right now. And it is something that, if you do want it, because ultimately, you still got to put the work in. But if you do want it, you got to, be really comfortable in building up your resilience and your optimism. That'd be the two things for me.
Yeah, and I think my advice would sound a lot like what you and Alex have been saying, Mina, is confidence. And make sure, and I'm trying to look in the camera when I say it, make sure that you are the one. I'll never forget our first day in university, first class orientation, and the prof said, look to the left of you, look to the right of you. One of you is only one of the three is going to be here by the end of graduation. And I kind of like laughed or whatever. Like the two people next to me did not make it, right? And not just that, in my field, you have to be impatiently patient, if that makes any sense. You have to work believing, like, I love your story. I love your guy's story, because that's what you did. You take risks and you believe, but you have to work believing that it's going to come. But you have to be understanding that it didn't come already. And and that has to do with confidence, drive, and belief in yourself. And don't let it waver. And if somebody's telling you different, you don't have to get rid of them completely, but make sure you surround yourself with people that are there to help you succeed, and you help them succeed. But that would be my advice. Confidence, make sure you're the one, and believe in yourself.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I mean, Alex usually likes to ask last minute questions, so I'm going to give it to Alex to either ask any more questions you want to ask or wrap it up. But I think that was fantastic. That was amazing.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to end this on. I feel like I've said this on many episodes, but I was like a cat before you guys said that. Now I feel like I'm like a lion. I feel like I'm gonna run through a wall, right? Like that
You've never
confidence.
said that before. What are you
I've
talking
never
about?
said that. I said it in my head, Mina. Okay, maybe we cut it out on previous episodes because it was so corny, eh? All
We'll
right,
let him say it for the next 3 episodes. We'll hold him to it, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
There we go. We're gonna move around the order, but thank you guys. That was an excellent way to end this this podcast episode on. I think those are really great, tangible piece of advice people can follow. Thank you guys for taking the time today. This has been very illuminating on your stories and your pathway, working in sports, and just being incredible role models, I think, for the people that come after you, as well as your families and Mina and I. So thank you guys for the time.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure getting to know you and your family, right? Family is obviously such a big part of who you guys are. And I think in a fast-paced, ever-changing world, that's really so important. I think it's becoming more important than it ever has been before. So thank you for allowing us to learn about you guys as individuals, but also as a family unit.
Thank you, Mina. Thank you, Alex. Our pleasure. Loved the opportunity just to chat, and congratulations to both the two of you on starting a fantastic podcast. Looking forward to many years of success of this.
Yeah,
Thank you
really
so much.
appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for tuning in and listening. Please subscribe, share, and join the journey of growth untold. Don't miss a single nugget. Hit that follow button now on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram.